Again, officially a very, very, very warm welcome to yet another book review from the Product Book Club. Um, I think we have crushed almost 6 weeks now. Isn't that awesome? Today is the sixth week out of the 52 weeks. And we have a fancy name to our YouTube as well. It's called as Product Book Club now. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this till we got some 100 subscribers and we reached there in like 1 hour. So that's awesomeness. Fantastic. Today we are reviewing the design classic. Every designer is asked to read it. So today is Design of Everyday Things. I don't think it's just for designers. I think everybody who's interested in human beings should definitely read this book. So in case you're excited about what is the schedule of the Product Book Club, here we go. We have it on our website. Here is a nice way of telling you which day what is getting reviewed. So yeah, so today we are in week 6 and we have a homegrown technique called as 10-30. Basically, it's 10 big ideas from the book distilled under 30 minutes. Which means if you don't have time to spend like 6 to 7 hours to read the book, just tune in for 30 minutes and you will get the most important things. And our sprinters are doing an amazing job. So you should be able to grasp it very quickly. And I keep saying this, that the best way to imbibe a book is you go read it. The second best is to tune in here. Even if you say, I'm going to, watch it later in YouTube, believe me, making that time and watching it is hard. So you being here is the awesomeness, okay? So we will start with the duet. It was once upon a time called as poet. And I think our sprinters will tell you what that means. With that, over to you folks. And are we ready?
As Karthi mentioned, today we are covering the classic text for designers and product thinkers, The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. The book was originally published in 1988 with the title Poet, The Psychology of Everyday Things. It has proved to be so foundational that it has been in reprint ever since. It is one of the first principles book, and if you're a designer, a design researcher, or anyone who is designing products for human use, you have to read this book. The sprinters today are Shivam Sharma, UX designer at OLX Autos, me, Himanshu Kalra. I'm doing my MDes from NIF Delhi, Soma Gorai, architecture undergraduate from IIT Roorkee, and Kaushiki Priyam, UX designer at Roku. And so why are we covering this book? In just one decade, we have gone from technology changes rapidly, but people change slowly. That's the main gist of it. In just one decade, we have gone from button telephones and dial-up internet to virtual reality headsets and instant free video calling to anyone in the world. Technology is changing fast, but people don't. This book highlights the principles of design based on understanding of people. And for the next 1,000 years, it's safe to say that these principles are not going to change. So here are the principles to keep in mind when you're designing for humans. Over to you, Shubham.
So hi, everyone. So you see this door. How you open this door? Can you share your reactions over the chat? Possibly with the handle. And this handle is nothing but a signifier, which provides a strong cue to you how to operate this particular user object. And also the signifier is that like the pretext of the signage thing, where the sign come from. And in totality, this is affordance, is a relationship between you and your object. So let me give you some more example and establish the fact where. So you see a first example is as a cup. So what you do, you grab the handle, there is a cup holds some tea or coffee. What you do with the scissor? Naturally, you put your single finger with thumb finger in the hole and 3 fingers and the rest of the other hole. And it's clicking, it's working. Similarly, this chair is to like sit, rest your bum there. So let me also like now divert with the topic. When the same thing happens to you, now what is the affordance here? Like in the early example, where you're easily able to like connect with the grip of the cup, grip of the scissor, and easily able to relate with the chair. Here, our affordance had a friction because it doesn't perceive in the natural way which you like used to see or behave with the object. So this relationship is breaking here. Right? Now you can see the mug. If you hold it, it will twist. I don't know how to figure out with the scissor. And obviously there is a higher bump in the chair, you can't sit. So it doesn't give you a natural feeling of use of the chair. You see this first example on the left, there is a handle which depicts as a, like there is a grip you need to pull, but the text is push. So there is a friction. Now your relationship is breaking, the affordance is breaking. But on the other side, the design of the handle, it's related to the good affordance because it's saying the pull, your handle design is also conveying the same. So I know like now you can relate and establish the meaning of affordance. Give me some more twist to your brains. How about these affordance? Like the example of a gun, you don't easily relate to. There is a friction in your mind because there is no affordance. There is no natural affordance. There is a teapot. How you pour, how you handle, it's very difficult to assume. There is a spoon. You can't like scoop it out. Even if you scoop it out, how you pour? And the classic example of wine case. So these affordance plus signifier, the signifier maybe there's the exact way where to communicate, where to take actions. So in totality, affordance and signifiers play a very important role in our life. And as a designers, we play around with it, hook onto it, so that we design better products. Like this is the exact way where to exit. If you put this exit sign on a wrong door, it will be disaster. And the second most next topic is about mapping. If you hold a Ford EcoSports car, or maybe some for your car which you're using, and somebody sits and asks you where is the belt, how to adjust the seat, how to put so it's very difficult to like tell them how to do it, even if you are confused, because there is no natural mapping to those buttons. Some on the left, there is a lever on the left, there is a lever on the right, then there is a front lever for coming the adjusting. But in the Mercedes, they have tracked it. They put the same like kind of a seat thing where the controls are in the shape of the form of the chair. So there is a natural mapping of, okay, the tilt, the headrest, there is a button, there is a backrest, there is a button in shape of backrest, there is a bottom. So now you're easily able to relate to the mapping. So this is another way of example, like principle, where we perceive in a natural fashion, and we try to accommodate ourselves, and where usability is higher if you map all those things naturally. Let me give you some more example. Like if you digitally use the like volume bar, the left hand side is, you naturally know this is like going to decrease and increase. The similar example of a segue. When you move forward, there is a natural reaction to move forward to go ahead, and there is a natural reaction of lean forward backwards, so to stop or like decrease your speed. Similarly, all those keyboard function. So using all those principles, certainly we know this naturally in our day-to-day life, and it's affecting. And as a designer, we must relate to these principles and to make life better. Over to Himanshu.
So Shubham has summarized the first three design principles very beautifully, which is affordance, signifiers, and natural mapping. Feedback is a very logical continuation to those design principles. So take a minute to just look at this diagram. Like it's talking about a faucet, and there's a lot of cases in which you actually burn your hands. In fact, to a second or third degree burns from hot water, just because we have no way for knowing like how hot the water is. So just take a minute to think about, like, it takes just 1.8 seconds for the water to burn your hand, like with a third degree burn, if it's at 150 Fahrenheit. In terms of Celsius, I would say it's a little above 100 degrees Celsius. And that's a very normal setting that faucets use these days. So like, it's a very weird thing for me to see that, okay, such a dangerous control is just being applied in everyday things. So here I have like just a comparison with more like user-friendly or design-friendly faucet. On the left side, you have no way to know like how hot the water is, versus there is an LED attached to this faucet which turns red for hot water. But if it comes down to a bearable temperature, it turns green and then blue. So it tells you that when is the right time to put your hand under the water and expect good hot water to come, but not to burn your hand. So just the feedback that we use naturally, which is the steam coming out of water, is not enough. The LEDs are making your lives much more easier by adding that visual feedback. to the entire like faucet experience. You'll see all kinds of feedback playing whenever you are paying on any like portal, especially if you're paying with your Apple Watch. You get three kinds of feedback. One is visual, where you'll see that green check mark appear on your Apple Watch. The second is a haptic feedback. Your Apple Watch will vibrate. It'll tell your hand that, okay, the payment has processed. So you don't need to actually look at it to know that payment has gone through. And then third is the sound. It makes that delightful, like, bling kind of sound to let you know that, okay, the payment has actually gone through. So feedback is telling you at each moment, like what's going on, and helps you decide on the next action. So the next action could be either putting your hand under the water or maybe removing your hand from the payment method, just to make sure that, okay, the work is done and you don't need to go through it anymore. And feedback must be immediate, informative, planned, and prioritized appropriately. We saw the immediate and informative nature of it. Let's go to the next one and see the plan and prioritized nature of it. So in this situation, you're seeing a bad feedback versus a good feedback. So on the left side, you're seeing a very generic error message. It doesn't give you like what you can do in order to solve this issue. Whereas on the right side, it's clearly telling you there's no internet. You need to check your connectivity and then retry again. So it's very clear and concise in telling you what the next step should be. And Don says that poor feedback is actually worse than no feedback. So here I have an XKCD comic example where this person is trying to get their Wi-Fi cellular reception on their phone, and they're getting a very erratic feedback from their phone signal. So he's trying out a bunch of things. He's trying to stand on a chair, go to different acrobatics, tried with a pineapple, which doesn't really make sense, but somehow he starts to get the Wi-Fi signal. So he's just sticking with it. And Karthi mentioned like, we were brainstorming about this, and she mentioned like there's actually a lot of danger because of like wireless signals in high-rise buildings. People go to like extreme lengths and they don't realize that they're going to fall off, like just over their ledge, just trying to catch the Wi-Fi signal. And poor feedback can be even more dangerous in critical situations where you have a lot of controls. So in this situation, like if we do not plan and prioritize the feedback appropriately, the pilots or the person driving the show in these kind of situations, so you can imagine doctors in hospital wards as well, they'll get overwhelmed and they won't be able to function properly. Now I want to switch gears to another design principle. Here you're looking at a Keurig coffee cup, and here's where the designers really shine through. I think this is the beauty of designers, to put constraints into the world and not let the user do the wrong thing. So in that Keurig example, you cannot put the Keurig in the wrong direction. There's only one direction it'll go inside the machine, and we can only operate it in that manner. Constraints help us to take the right action, even when the situation or the item itself is new to us. And I love this example of like infant toys. Infants have no way of reading manuals or like communicating with us. They have no words to understand, like how should they play with these things? But they just naturally are able to figure out that, okay, it's a circular thing, it should go in a circular hole. And my niece, she's playing with this exact set right now, and she's able to just figure it out very seamlessly. And I was just amazed by looking at, oh my God, we just give the toy to her and she's able to just rock this toy every day. So I feel like this is where the constraints example come to my mind. And there's another toy which is very familiar to us, which is the Lego. It's become like a roller coaster ride of just people just coming in and like trying out different versions of Legos. And whenever you see a Lego, like you might not have the final structure always that you need to build towards, but somehow you're able to figure it out. So Don asked this question to a group of people whom he was experimenting with. Like, can you assemble these 15 pieces into the final structure, even if I don't show you what it's going to be? So in that situation, he points out that people actually made use of these 4 kinds of constraints which were physical, cultural, semantic, and logical. So I'll take you through each one of these. Physical constraints were the ones that limited alternative placement. So if you have a base of a motorcycle and a cylindrical piece to go on top of it, your physical constraint will tell you that, okay, the cylindrical piece will fit only one way and not the other way. The cultural constraints dictate the placement of like different kinds of items like traffic lights, or in this situation, we are trying to put lights on a police motorcycle. Like you're able to see some pieces named police. So you're trying to map, okay, what does a police motorcycle look like? But hey, here is the catch. Like if you're from India and trying to build a US motorcycle, you might not know that the blue light goes actually on top of the motorcycle. Whereas somebody from the US will be able to just like come in and then like knowingly just piece the blue light on the top, red light at the back, and yellow light as the headlight. Whereas for somebody from a different culture, it might be difficult. So you're seeing like how the nuances of cultural constraints vary from place to place, and it might help some people. For some different cultures, you might need to change them. Semantic constraints, they are very like as soon as you see it, you know whether it's right or wrong. So if you see somebody riding backwards on a motorcycle, even if they're doing a stunt, you know that's not the right way to ride a motorcycle. So in this situation, you will not put the head facing backward on a motorcycle. You'll, even though the head is very free in its motion, you'll end up putting it in the right side forward, even without any instruction or manual telling you. And if there's only one piece left and only one place it could possibly go, logic will dictate that the right placement where it needs to be. So if you have a police like a banner and it needs to go only in front above the headlight, you'll know at the end of assembling this piece that, okay, that's the only place where this one extra piece could go. So we have gone from like a 15 pieces Lego puzzle to a assembled like police motorcycle. And you can see how constraints were really powerful here, and they're a powerful tool for the designer, as well as a great guidance for the user, because it guides the users toward the right action, even in the absence of any instruction or a guide. So you don't need to get to like the reading mode or pop out an instruction manual. You can just like take a look at the product itself, and the product will guide you like what the next steps need to be. And yes, IKEA does do a great job of like putting constraints inside of the items itself. So when you're assembling it, I actually find myself referring to the manual ever less so often, whereas like for some other companies, even the manual just baffles you. So yeah, kudos to IKEA for their efforts there.
So continuing on the principles of design, let's talk about conceptual models. There are products. There is toothpaste, there is hairspray, there is orange. And then there is your mental image of how those products work. Toothpaste has a viscous fluid inside it. Yeah, hairspray sprays water. And orange peel just has an orange inside us. But now imagine someone designs a toothpaste and gives it to you, but instead of the sweet viscous fluid, so someone designs a toothpaste, but instead of what you expect it to come, what comes out of the source of candy, not good. Or you go to a salon and instead of spraying water through the bottle, it grows a plant. Or let's say you buy an orange and you peel it, instead of an orange, what comes out is a football. Not good. I know, like not a good place to be. It's like it's not funny, right? But and the reason why it's not funny is that it completely contradicts my existing conceptual model of a toothpaste, of a hairspray, or an orange with what this person has given me. I had something in mind that this is supposed to be this way, but it is not working this way. So here's the thing about conceptual models. We already have in our mind how something should work. And as users, we just expect them to work. And these conceptual models help people predict how something works and what to do if something goes wrong. The model themselves do not have to be complete. They just have to be useful. They just have to work. Good design minimizes the friction between the user's conceptual model and the way it actually works. Don Norman also talks about the three perspectives on every product: the designer's conception, The designer's model is that how it looks, how it feels, and how it operates. The system image is what can be derived from the physical structure and that has been built, including the user's manual. And the user's mental model develops through the interaction of the product and the system image. Here's an example where as a designer, it's your duty, it's the highest priority to make sure that the user feels minimum friction between their conceptual model, between what they can perceive, and as it has already been talked about by Shubham before. A lamp the designer had in mind, a lamp which is flexible, stable in any position and at any angle. The system image, what I can see, what anybody can see and figure out is that a lamp which is flexible, stable in any position and at any angle. And this is what a user's model is also, that a lamp which is flexible, stable in any position at any angle.
Thank you, Himanshu. So now I'll give you a perspective where how you actually eventually you learn affordance, significance, mapping, constraints, and conceptual model. So what is there? Like how it amalgamates into one thing, like what we know and the in the memory and what we see around the world. So in totality, we have a mixture of all those things and we try to persuade things. So let me give you an example where typewriters. Nobody teaches us to how to type. It's always there. They're transformed into from a like certain old shape to a digital shape. We know from the ages like how to ride a bicycle. Nobody trained you. There is no training manual for that. It comes naturally. Similarly, we see the word, we cross the road, we see a red light, we stop. So these are the things in the world. So that's called as knowledge in around the world. So you see the affordance, you see the cues in the signifier, you act upon, you exit from the window, you take an exit, you travel, you cross the road. So all the things are in the word and you learn it and you have it. Now there is another side to it. Whereas this is the memory, it's in your head. So this is a classic example from the Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, where the Alibaba's cousin got into the cave, but he don't know the password. Because if you don't know the password, you cannot come out of the cave, and ultimately you have to the thieves will kill you. So that is a memory which is in your head. You have to remember and very consciously use it when it is required. Similarly, it's the company policy. You have to change your password in every 3 months. You have to change it, otherwise you will be locked out from the IT. So that is called as knowledge in your head. And by balancing the knowledge in the head and in the word, we kind of like create our own word where we apply to objects. This is a kind of usability we create. And as a designer, we must understand how my user will know these amalgamation, like both the memories, and will actually use my product. So it will definitely help you to understand.
Now we are switching gears to a different kind of game. So I'm going to play a party game with you. The game is called Never Have I Ever. If you have played this game, just like wave your hand and show me you know the structure. So in Never Have I Ever, you talk about things that are very commonplace, but you haven't done them yourself. So never have I ever left the car keys inside my car and got locked out. If you have never done that, just like give me a wave, raise your hand, show me something. Okay, Rohit has never left the car keys. Sharwani also has never left the car keys. And pretty much most of us, I'm not seeing any raised hands over here. We have left the car keys inside their car at some point. Cool. Let's go to the next one. Never have I ever made copies, Xerox copies of a document and walked off, leaving the original inside the machine. Raise hands, people. Come out. Never have I. Sharwani is beating this game. Like she has never ever left the original inside the machine. I have walked off with a very important original inside the machine. Okay, people are definitely getting excited for this one. People have left their originals inside the machine. Let's go to the third one. This is a really popular game. Never have I ever cooked a great meal and forgot to turn off the burner. Oh my God, that's a dangerous one. Show me hands, people. No hands? But we seriously have no people who have. Okay, Ajay mentions that he never forgot to turn the burner. Great, Ajay. Keep it up. You're keeping everybody safe in the house. I've definitely left the burner on. And in fact, my roommate once left the burner on for like 4 or 5 hours altogether. It was on low though, so we survived that. So let's move on to the crux of it all. So what you saw just now was examples of a memory lapse slip. It's very commonplace. And in fact, it happens more with experts than novices. So if you are an expert at doing something, you're much more likely to fall into the memory lapse slip category. Another one could be an action-based slip. Like you poured milk into your coffee and then put your coffee cup into the refrigerator. Okay, you wanted to actually put the milk into the refrigerator, but you just ended up applying that action to some other item. So these are very commonplace slips and they happen every day. Sometimes we categorize them as silly mistakes. Don Norman calls them as slips. Let's go to the next one. But sometimes these mistakes are not as lighthearted. They turn out into like mass scale tragedies as well. So this is a very sad story from 2013 in Brazil, in Santa Maria, where around 230 people died in a tragic accident in a nightclub. And what was happening in the nightclub? It was just like a regular weekend party time where people were doing some pyrotechnics. So they had some fireworks going on in indoor spaces. And they used some outdoor flares indoors just to give off those effects in that place. But they just felt that, okay, those pyrotechnics were safe to use indoors. I don't know why they made that mistake, but that will be called a knowledge-based mistake. You're using something that is not supposed to be used in its fashion. And when the fire started, in the first instant, actually the guards blocked people from leaving because they didn't know what was going on inside. And in this club, it's in a college town. So people sometimes they would leave in the past without paying. So the guards had a rule, like if anybody has not paid, do not let them go outside. Whereas in this case, the rule itself was very flawed. Like that rule shouldn't apply in emergency conditions. So when people were trying to leave, the guards blocked them, and that raised the number of calamity that happened, that ended up affecting people in Brazil. Let's go to the next slide. So in all these examples, we are seeing like ourselves and other people make mistakes. And that makes me think of to err is human, but is it really so? In the design world, we have a natural tendency to blame humans for errors, including ourselves. We don't even leave ourselves out of that picture. But let's change the narrative over here. It's not a valid analysis to just stop at humans whenever we find the error. So it should not be possible for one simple error to cause such a widespread damage. So what is actually at fault? Like, is it the human itself, or should we have gone deeper to analyze the problem? Where did the problem actually lie? In the design world, like a designer's way of thinking is that the problem never lies with the human. It's always the bad design that causes these issues and keeps making it happen again and again. Go to the next slide, please. So in a classic example of US Air Force F-22 Raptor, this is a very sophisticated plane, but the pilots have complained of oxygen deprivation in these planes in the past. And there was a plane crash in 2010, which was analyzed by the US Air Force in 2012. And they just went to like asking why did the plane crash? Because it went into an uncontrolled dive. And their analysis said that pilot failed to initiate a timely recovery. And they said this pilot is at fault. Whereas if we apply a 5 why framework, which was developed by Toyota, and it's the framework that Don recommends that we should use whenever we are asking why did this error happen. If we had applied that 5 why method, we wouldn't stop at the pilot itself. We would ask beyond that question, and why did the pilot actually fail? And that might lead us to, because he might have been unconscious. Why might have he been unconscious? Because of possible oxygen deprivation, maybe. We have heard people in the past complain of oxygen deprivation. And why was the pilot deprived of oxygen in F-22? So now we shift our attention from the pilot to the plane itself, because if we have seen this situation happen, play out multiple times and with different pilots, maybe the pilots are not at fault. It's actually something going on, something wrong in the design of F-22 itself that is creating these dangerous conditions for the pilots. And it leads us to identifying that mistake or the error and helping us fixing it. So Don says like we cannot fix anything until we admit that there is a problem. So in this 5 why method, we actually come to admitting that, okay, there might be some problem with the F-22. That gives a start to a design problem, and we can start to fix it. So I showed you 2 types of errors, which are classified by Don into slips and mistakes. On the slip side, we did the exercise of like memory lapse slips, and we saw the examples of rule-based and knowledge-based mistakes. So that's the overall analysis. But if I wanted you to take away just one keys for like errors, in terms of like designing for errors, you must understand the root cause of the error. So ask 5 whys, and it need not be only 5. Like 5 is just like a generic number. You can go beyond 5 also if it's making sense for your use case. So apply as many whys as it makes sense to get to the root cause of the error, and do not stop whenever you find a human responsible for the error. And just see whether the action passed the common sense test. Like, is it a common scenario? If the error is easy to undo, then it's great. Like make the errors easy to undo. Like we place a back button very accessible on our digital platforms. But if it's harder to if it's harder to undo the action, make the action itself harder. Like the example comes to mind is a nuclear attack, which is a very extreme example, but it tells you that a nuclear attack launch will be we cannot reverse the actions of it. So they make it really hard for any president or any one person to take that action in the first place itself, and make it easy to detect those errors as well. So I want to end with this mantra: to err is not a human thing, it's a system thing. And that's what designers actually imbibe and do in day-to-day basis. So I'll transfer it over to Himanshu to tell about like how can we design better systems, continuing from the same thought.
Thank you, Kaushiki. To err is system. To err is not human. So how do we design better systems? We follow the human-centered design process, also known as design thinking. It's a 4-step iterative process, and iteration is the 5th step. We start with observation, then we move to idea generation, then we move to prototyping, and then we move to testing. And we repeat it over and over and over again until we get the better statements, we get better solutions, and we get closer and closer approximations to the final end product. So observation. We have to determine who the user group is and observe them in their natural setting, because the most common mistake that all designers do is that we assume that the user thinks like we do, but they don't. People are just very, very different. And when we start to really empathize and really detach ourselves from the situation, detach our own personal agenda and look at it from somebody else's point of view, the user's point of view, we start to see world from their what are their problems, and we start to discover what are their frustrations. People are very different. A designer needs to immerse themselves in their environment, in their way of thinking, to design for them. The second step is idea generation, and it has 3 rules. The first rule is generate numerous ideas. The number of ideas, the quantity of ideas leads to quality, and the more the better. It has been established, it's still a misnomer that people try to strive for quality of ideas, and there have been experiments that prove that the number of ideas, and because they give you access to more combinations and more permutations, you get much better ideas when you have a lot of them. Rule 2 is to be creative without regards to constraints. Rule 3 is to question everything. There is nothing that is to be left unquestioned when you're designing, especially older assumptions, and especially this is the way it works in the real world. Most innovative firms, so to speak, have established themselves with the mantra that they always keep questioning the status quo, that this is not, maybe this has been the way around here for a long time, but this is not the way we are going to question that. And if it is no longer working, we design something new. And when we have to design something new, we start with a prototype. A prototype is a simple, cheap, quick mock-up of each potential solution. It can take any form. If it's a product, it can be a thermocol mouse or quick UX. In UX, they can be app mockups and sketches. The final step is testing. You gather a small group of people who correspond as closely as possible to the target population for whom the product is intended. You have them use the prototypes as nearly as possible to the way they should actually use them in their natural setting, not in the lab setting, not in the situation where they feel as a little comfortable. And you observe them and ask them to think out loud while they're using your product. You ask them what is working, what is not working, and what makes them frustrated. Once the initial phase is done and they have used your product and your prototype in front of you, you go and interview them and ask them to retrace their steps and remind them of their actions and ask them, why did you do that? Why did you do that? What you seem very happy at this point. What was going on in your mind at that point? The mantra here is to fail fast, fail often, figure out what works, and we move on to iteration. Fail fast, fail often, figure out what works, refine the brief, maybe rewrite the problem statement, take what works with you, and repeat the process. You repeat the process until the ideas become more cleaner, the specifications become better defined, the prototypes become closer and closer approximations to the target and the actual product. Moving on to the next idea, there are three levels of processing whenever we encounter a new product. There's visceral, there's behavioral, and there's reflective. Visceral is the baseline, which is the most physical embodied form of processing. Is this product attractive? This is the first impression. You're not even thinking about this is how you feel about a product. This is what beautiful products just ace, and there are so many. We always buy so many beautiful products that are useless because in the moment it just appeals to our visceral brain so much. And there's behavioral, which is about usability and product function, performance, effectiveness. And reflective, which is about the meaning of the product and the impact of thought. So why would you buy a bamboo toothbrush instead of a regular plastic toothbrush? Because you reflected on it, and because you have thought through this, that what is the impact of your choice of toothbrush is making on the environment, even small, but it matters. With that, over to you, Soma.
So continuing with reflective processing, I want to ask you, do you remember that broken sandal when you were chilling on Goa beach, or those wet shoes when it rained randomly when you went hiking? Chances are you don't unless someone reminds you, but you do remember the beautiful sunsets and the views from the top. So vacations are remembered with fondness despite unpleasant experiences. Many love the thrill of roller coasters, yet all the while on the ride, everyone is screaming, some even cry. Ask the people with tears in their eyes, will you go again? And they will obviously say, of course. So amusement parks are remembered as fun, even though we get scares throughout the experience. Memory outlasts momentary feels and thoughts. Reflective processing, that is, memory outlasts visceral and behavioral processings. It is reflection that leads us to recommend products and services. Now, moving on to the next topic. Okay, so let's take the case of driving a car. All the non-drivers, do not fret, even I do not know how to drive. So, okay, let us break the driving situation into real slow steps. You have to go to the grocery store. You plan on taking the road by the school, which has a right turn. Next, you tell your brain
what you have learned to do, like look in the rear view mirror for possible obstruction, change gears, etc. Then then your hand muscles will finally take the turn, twist the steering wheel to the right. You have now executed your plan. Next, you observe what has happened. The car has turned. Further, you realize that the car has turned right without hitting anywhere, harming anything. Now you have reached where you want to, and yes, this is exactly how you planned your goal. So now you have also evaluated your plan. Let us go back to the previous example again with a twist. So, okay, so what are the questions? Let's evaluate in a form of question answer what we just did. What do I want to accomplish? Going to grocery store by car. What are the possible action sequences? Take the right turn for the road by the school. What action can I do now? Look in the rear view mirror, change gears, moderate the speed, clutch control, etc. How do I do it? Move my hand muscles to turn the steering wheel, control the gear and speed. Now the evaluation time. Wait, what happened? Took the turn, but here is a cow in front of the car. Now, what does that mean? Need to stop. The loop now goes back to step 1 with my new goal as save the cow and me. So what do? Press the brake. What happens? The car stops, thank God. So now back to the evaluation. Is this okay? Have I accomplished my goal? Well, no, I did not reach the grocery store, but the cow and I are safe. No issues, we can resume the loop again and go back answering the same questions we just answered. Continuing with the previous example, let us try to relate to the types of processing which Himanshu had explained. Goal, that is reaching somewhere, and plan are decisions we consciously take after thinking, that is reflective processing. Specifying the steps. So steps which we have learned over experience, also known as behavioral processing. Perform, our muscles working on their own with subconsciously, we do not really tell our muscles what to do, which is known as visceral processing. Then again, in the evaluation stage, we have perceiving, which our brain acting on its own and it perceives the world around us. The next is interpret, which is we consciously connect what we see with what we have learned, that is behavioral processing. And the final, compare or check whether we reached our goal or not, reflection. So all these examples tell us about the gulf of execution, where users try to figure out how to use a product, and the gulf of evaluation, where they try to figure out what state it is in and whether their actions got them to their goal. The aim of a successful product is to gap these gulfs of execution and evaluation as much as possible. And to do so, we have the 7 principles of design, which already had been explored in detail by my co-presenters. And here's a quick recap. So discoverability. For example, in this case, we have the search button so that the user can easily discover whatever they want. Next is the feedback. The progress bar is a very good example of feedback. The next is conceptual model. In this example, we have the buttons, which are more or less similar across all mediums. And so the user can easily fetch from their memory how a button works. Then there are affordances, the classic example of scissors, which clearly let us know what can be done. Then signifiers, we associate certain signs, icons with certain actions, and we all are very familiar with this example of sleep, shutdown, and restart. Then there's constraints, one of the best, in case of, mappings. In case of steering wheels, twisting right turns the vehicle right and vice versa. Then there's constraint. One of the best examples is of the battery holder, which through design limits to the only correct way it can fit. And finally, never criticize until you have better alternative. Norman's mantra.
All right. That's the summary of design of everyday things.